Good morning. We're live with Tuesdays with Kamira. Our guest today is Justine. Justine's going to talk to us about porn literacy at home. How do we talk to our kids about pornography? I know this could be a touchy subject, but it's also an important one. So we're going to get right to it. If you have questions or comments, please type them in the comment section and Justine will address them live on air if you're watching us live. If you have questions or comments and you're catching us on the recording, nobody's going to be available to address your questions or comments, but another watcher may dialogue with you. Let's get started. Justine is a health education consultant and speaker. She works with teens on pornography literacy. She also trains, consults those seeking to build socially just and comprehensive health programming. She's going to tell us exactly what that means when she tells us how she got into health education. Welcome, Justine, and please tell us how you got into health education.
Thanks, Kamira. Glad to be here. Well, I'm a huge proponent of social justice health education. And the reason is we can teach our young people all about what health is, but that doesn't mean that they will have equal access to experiencing it. Mm-hmm. And this was very evident in my first year of teaching, really my first 5 weeks of teaching. I was in Houston, Texas, and I had 24 students in my 8th grade math class. And in this summer program, there were 2 that were already parents and 2 that were already pregnant. And this is an 8th grade class. Mm-hmm. I had one student that really impacted my career trajectory with her being absent for 2 out of the 5 weeks that I was present. And when she returned, I had found out that she was absent because she didn't know she was having her period. And this had been going on since 6th grade. So she just wouldn't come to school because of the level of pain that she was experiencing and the lack of knowledge as to what was happening to her body. Mm-hmm. And using her words, she told me, "I think I'm broken down there." And nobody had told her about this. And so that's when I knew that there was something going on with how the lack of health education directly impacts our students' achievement.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And it probably happens more often than most of us would imagine.
Exactly. I mean, this is just because I had happened to reach out to her and connect with her on this. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure there are many other stories that are like that just, haven't come out.
Okay. So tell us, why porn literacy? I think we should probably begin by defining pornography for the sake of this discussion.
Yeah. Pornography is sexually explicit media that can be in books, in songs, it can be in sexting, it can be over videos, and it can be over pictures. So that's overall how pornography can get out there in the world and what it is. The literacy component is having a critical lens when you are exposed to it, understanding its implications, understanding who's behind it, who's behind the camera, who's behind the story, what are their intentions, and how it might impact you and how you internalize topics around sexuality. So in the same way that we're teaching a lot of our middle school students around media literacy, what does this commercial imply about women? What is this commercial implying about this person's race? We're doing the same thing with pornography literacy. And we need to, because a lot of young people are using it as their form of sex education, when we need to remind them that it is an entertainment industry, not an education one.
Interesting. So let's just jump right into it. How can parents promote porn literacy at home? What questions should they ask? How do we bring it up if we've never addressed the topic?
Mm-hmm. Well, the ideal answer is that your first time talking about sex with your teen shouldn't be in high school when they are now talking about porn with you or discovered porn. It should have been an ongoing conversation. And I always like to say, from the womb to the tomb. So that when you start talking about pornography literacy, when it is age appropriate, it's something that is building on all the topics they've already been talking with you so comfortably about body agency, about their body parts, what the accurate terms are for these body parts, and what is normal versus what they might see on a screen that has been auditioned, that has been curated to entertain. And so I think an easy way to, start bringing this conversation in is by simply saying, as I said earlier, porn is entertainment, not education. And in the same way that we're not learning physics by watching the Transformers, we shouldn't be learning about sex by watching porn. And if we are, we need to remember it is a fantasy. It is entertainment. And there are real people behind the other screen there who are employees of a company that should be given the same types of employee benefits and rights as any other job. And it's not that simple. So when they are consuming free images and free film, we have to understand, well, who's getting paid for this and who's behind that? And is it all ethical in how these things play out? And that can be one way to really politicize the issue as opposed to make it personal in your first conversation with your teen. I have yet to meet that teenager that wants to volunteer sharing about their personal experience with their parent around pornography. And so one way to really talk about it is by politicizing it, talking about, current events that maybe have to do with the issue. A simple way is, if you're watching this live or as a recording, say, hey, I attended this parent talk earlier today, or I watched this parent talk about pornography. And here were some of the tips or, topics that came up. Does that resonate with you and your classmates at school? You're talking about, do those topics just resonate? It's not about when was the last time you watched porn and what did you watch and did you like it? That's not something they're going to respond to well. But talking about it as a news item is something that might be a little bit more palatable.
Okay. So we shouldn't make it personal when we're talking to our teens about porn, especially for the first time, but really
especially for the first time. Right. But you want them to become comfortable with those topics in a way that isn't feeling like they're being attacked or being in trouble or being shamed for trying to understand and explore their sexuality.
We have a comment I'm going to share. Donna says, very simply, thank you. So she's thanking you for the work you do. Thank you for commenting, Donna. Anybody else who has a comment or a question, feel free to put it in the comment section and we will address it. And Justine will answer any questions you have.
Thanks for the love, Donna.
Oh, we got another one. Let's see. It says, Sharon says, TV shows will reference porn too. The Good Place jokes about it a bunch of times. A place to bring it up?
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, my next recommendation is, aside from current news and events, you can be using actual media that is talking about it or bringing it up. And I think that media really creates consciousness. And if we're not able to really control or at least create commentary around what they're exposed to, we're really missing out on an opportunity to do so. So if The Good Place or some other TV show might be bringing it up, ask them about it. And you're using the show that is happening, in a family-friendly way that is accessible. Maybe while you're vacuuming, it's very casual. Asking them oh, what are your thoughts on, what that character just said or what that actor just said about it? Or do you think that's true? So you're just getting their opinions about it. You're getting an understanding of what they know already about it, their understanding. And then you're there to insert your values in the process. I think that using TV shows and film are an easy way to talk about porn without having to watch porn or to be exposed to porn. And that's very similar to how I bring it up in my own classrooms.
Wonderful. Thank you. What are you seeing in terms of teens and pornography? What is happening? What are they exposed to? What are they moving towards?
Yeah. I think a lot of the questions that I get from high schoolers still sound like what I get from my fifth graders in a puberty class. Is it common for? How normal is it if I do? It's like all the phrasing always starts like that. They just want to know that they're normal and they're okay, or they're gonna be okay, because they're afraid of how to navigate their sexuality in a world that is so shaming of sex. And so a lot of times I'll get questions on, am I supposed to wax down there? How do I do that? Do boys only like, genitalia that doesn't have pubic hair? Is my penis size normal? These are the same questions that I'm getting with my fifth and sixth graders. And yet these are almost grown adults who are 11th and 12th grade. And so I think, one, just making sure that you're talking to them about the entertainment industry being one that is Photoshop on steroids, right?
Yes.
And so not only are maybe images even being altered, but even the people that are accepted or asked to be performers are people who devote a lot of their life and time and or money to making their body look a specific way, which isn't average. And so body insecurity is very common with high schoolers because they're seeing bodies that are not like the ones they normally would see or far from what their own looks like. Body hair specifically is one that I get a lot of questions about because they're concerned that because they have it, that therefore it's ugly and it's not attractive. And they wouldn't bring this up as much as I would like them to, but because there isn't a lot of usage of protective methods in porn, they therefore think that it's dirty or shameful to use protection or talk about protection, because then it seems like they're sleeping around or having, so many multiple partners, or they're void of intimacy, where we need to start normalizing protection because we want to prevent them from contracting sexually transmitted infections or avoiding an unplanned pregnancy. And that's not something that porn often includes in their scenes.
Okay, so I'm a parent, I'm watching this, and I wanted to type it. Sometimes I type notes in the comment section when a guest is speaking, and I had my hands in the wrong key, so it doesn't make sense. It's another language. I'm a parent, I'm watching this. I'm very interested in bringing up pornography. I'm not as versed as you are. What is age appropriate? When should I worry? When should I just know that this is developmentally appropriate and we're okay?
Developmentally appropriate answer is yes throughout all of high school. Age appropriate to me really means when they have already been exposed to it or people in their lives that are talking about it in their vicinity. And what we know actually from the data is as young as 8 to 11 years old is the first exposure of porn. That's not necessarily on purpose. It could be a pop-up from this on the screen. It could be a friend shoving an iPad in their face saying, look at this. Or they develop a crush and they're trying to Google, how do I kiss somebody? And they're coming across information that is actually porn. So at that moment, it is now age appropriate because it is something that is relevant. So I think that age relevant is a lot more of the focus that we need to be on than what's age appropriate, because that's evolving and changing all of the time, depending on, what every teen's exposure is to a variety of different mediums. And so I think bringing it up even before you might know they are watching porn is important, because you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive around these things. And that means talking to them early on with a centering around safety, fulfillment, and pleasure. This is like my mantra all the time across the lifespan when I teach topics on sexuality. We want those three things to be present: safety, fulfillment, and pleasure. And when you come at it with your messaging centered on those three things, the young person is more likely to listen, because you're not telling them, don't watch this, don't do this, wait until marriage, or shame them for being exposed to it. You're telling them, I want you to have relationships of all kinds, whether it be friendship, whether it be romantic, whether it be sexual, to be safe physically and emotionally. I want you to be able to be fulfilled in your identities and feel good about who you are. So is what you're seeing in service of that. And I want you to feel pleasure because I want you to enjoy your friendships. I want you to enjoy the people who claim to care about you. And I want you to feel good about that. And is pornography that's mainstream in service of that? Is what you're watching, whether it be a movie that is not even considered porn, a commercial, a billboard ad, or pornography, in service of those things? And if not, how can we dismantle the ways that they are trying to make you feel inadequate or miseducate you? That's what the literacy part is.
Now we're parents of tweens and teens on here. So how do we differentiate between porn literacy for the tweens and porn literacy for the teens?
Yeah. When I teach porn literacy in the 7th grade, it's a lot more focused on sexting and sextortion. So we are bringing up pornography at large by mentioning that it can come in all sorts of different mediums, and it's not uncommon for you to be curious about how your body works and to try to Google that and learn more on the internet. It is not safe for you to learn everything from what you are seeing in that through those mediums. And in terms of safety, that's where they are really vulnerable, because as they're trying to figure out their pubescent body, they are a lot more absorbing of messages that might be sent to them, not knowing that it's misinformation or being manipulated. And so we talk a lot about how some people will misuse their technology when they're communicating with other people with pressure. You know, if you don't do this, I'm going to send that picture you sent me to everyone else in the class. Or, come on, I thought you said you loved me, so you should show me a little bit more. And, you know, that type of communication is one that needs to be unpacked as abusive behavior. So we're not only just talking about sexually explicit media and mediums and how you exchange that, but also what is a healthy friendship and or a healthy relationship? And if somebody is really pressuring you to do something, or something is based on a condition, it is not a healthy relationship. And there are many ways to express affection to someone that don't rely on sending them something that you are not comfortable with. Further, we tell them what are the repercussions of actually disseminating images of themselves or others when they are a minor. And there's state by state, you know, laws on that in terms of what age, you know, qualifies as child pornography. But for the most part, 7th grade, it's deemed child pornography. And I don't think they think about it in that sense. So we're informing them of their rights, their safety, but also letting them know how they may think it is safe because it's just being sexted to another person in their class. But do you have a guarantee that it's going to only stay in the hands of that one person you're sending? And 2, do you recognize that if it gets in the hands of an adult, they can be misusing that for child pornography dissemination, which also puts you at stake of your own safety, but also guilty of being a part of that dissemination. So the focus in middle school is a lot more on child safety and how they don't even recognize that when they are trying to share these types of images, it's actually unsafe for a bigger reason than they might think. And then in the high school setting, it's a lot more focused on body image, on the lack of protection, on the lack of intimacy, the lack of consent, and the perpetuation of racialized sexual violence. So when we talk about power dynamics, it is amplified often in a lot of mainstream porn because of how a lot of male performers will be treating female performers in scenes, and how that ends up being internalized as normal or okay, and them starting to actually implement that and apply it into their own actual sexual relationships. And we see that data showing that there is an increased number of straight women in college who have noticed that the men that they sleep with think they all want to be choked, saying, well, I just thought all girls like that. And all girls actually in their mind are the femmes they are seeing performing in pornography. And again, we're forgetting it's an entertainment industry. It is not a education industry. So it's our job as educators to give them sexual decision-making skills and to help them to be more literate.
There are 2 points that I want to reiterate that you brought up. One, we should remind our youth that the people who star in these films or in any part of the entertainment industry, it's their job to look the way they do. And so they put in the hours to do that the same way people put in the hours at a desk job to sit there. So if you did work out and exercise and make shakes and stuff 8 to 10 hours a day, you'd look that way. Most
Right.
people don't do that. So, and sometimes our kids forget that. Sometimes we forget that
Yeah.
we're doing 45 minutes a day, and that's great for our hearts, and we should keep to that and be happy
Right.
with it. The other thing is, you mentioned that a lot of parents forget there are laws around this stuff. Kids do sexting different ways, depending on where you live. I know in my state, both children are guilty of pornography when they're sexting. So it's the sender and the receiver. And if they pass it around, it's all those receivers too. So this is an unintended consequence. So you may not want to have these difficult conversations with your children, but that's an unintended consequence that can open a quagmire of issues.
Yeah.
And then once you talk about legal issues, there's all kinds of other stuff. I have a question for you, but first we have a comment I want to put up. It is Shirley. She says, I'm dealing with this with my teens currently. I appreciate this so much. Oh, Shirley, thank you for watching us. And if you have a question, please post it up. We have another one.
Shirley, you're not alone.
Christina says, since my teens always brush me off on these topics, I researched and purchased a book that I gave them. I thought this was also safer than them receiving random information online, and they aren't really open to talking to me.
Yep, I think that is, a safe medium for them. I hope that they are reading the book that you're giving, and I'm hoping that maybe you can find opportunities to unpack the messages that were in that book, so that they can hear it from someone that they know so well and they trust. Because kind of holding on to that information without being able to process it can be really difficult. So I think you're doing the right thing. I think you can do something similar too with some media that they might be watching and using that as a jumping off point to be talking about these things. If your teen is into TV shows, I highly recommend the Netflix show Sex Education. The third season is starting next month, and I think it is extremely well done in a way that most teen shows are not around these issues, and it centers on sexuality topics. It is very real, it is very relevant, and I feel like most parents in America will be surprised that this is actually what teens are dealing with. But as an educator of 11 years in this very topic, it really fortifies that what I am teaching is absolutely age relevant.
Yes.
And it is so medically accurate in how they do it and so empowering too and inclusive. So I highly, highly recommend that show, Sex Education. And if you're comfortable enough watching it with your teen, every episode is a teachable moment times 10. And there are now 2 seasons that are already out. So that's another way to get them to be talking about sexuality topics. And porn does come up, where now you have something to talk about over the dinner table or on a drive.
Oh, thanks for that tool. Thank you. So I'm cleaning, straightening things, and I find pornography, or I guess that's the old school way. I share a computer and I see pornography when I pull it up to go check my email. How do I have this conversation with what do I do next? Do I have a conversation?
I think you should. I think you should. If there's another adult that you live with and that your child lives with, I think it's best that, both of you or all of you are having a conversation either one-on-one or together, like in a casual setting. Again, it's not like I need to speak with you. Let's get, around the dinner table. And it's like this whole conference like table kind of meeting. We really want to make this as casual and, free of shame as possible. And as I mentioned, you're centering your messaging on, hey, so I noticed something on the computer that you're watching. And I'm not surprised because it's normal for you to be curious about your body, or I know that you're in a relationship now and you're probably trying to get some ideas. I want you to know that it's going to leave out a lot of intimacy education that I hope that you are including in your relationship, or that you will include in your relationship. And, I want you to keep asking yourself the question as to whether or not you are learning how to actually be physically safe, to be emotionally safe. What you're watching is making you feel good about yourself, about your identities, and that you feel pleasure in real life and not just what you're watching on a screen. because you're not going to have internet access everywhere you go to experience pleasure.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that you, my child, self-sufficiently is able to pleasure themselves in a way that isn't dependent on a specific image or a specific scene that you have to press play on a technological device.
Mhm.
And that is really empowering. It's informative, it's thorough, and it's also letting your child know that you are recognizing them as a sexual being and a growing person who is going to do things that you may or may not be comfortable with, but if they are, you want them to be safe, fulfilled, and pleased in the process at any age that this is happening in. Because we have also a growing number of teens that are becoming dependent on porn in order to experience pleasure or their sexuality, where they are now deferring to that as opposed to engaging in real life conversations or relationships with other human beings. So we have dating going down astronomically. We have, the anxiety of even asking someone out going up astronomically. It's just easier to rely on porn to be able to be intimate with yourself or understand people. And that is not going to help them in the real world, right? I tell them, look, whether it's your first kiss or your 20th kiss, it's not going to be you kissing a literal phone screen or a literal computer screen. It's going to be an actual human being, I hope. Is pornography helping you to do that? And is it helping you to feel comfortable to be independent of what you're seeing on the screen? And we know adults that are struggling with that.
I like that message because that's one that's often overlooked, that I don't want you to be dependent upon pornography.
Right.
It's not, in that way, you're not making a value judgment. I also loved, and I think I'm going to repeat because parents who are discussing this for the first time or finding this information on their children's screens or whatever, when you said, I'm not surprised and it's normal. I think that helps set the tone for both the adult and the youth. We have another comment. Let's see. So Shirley said, what is the best way to talk about what my teen is wearing? I don't buy things that are revealing, but she likes to tie her shirts where they show midriff or wear shorts that are now too short. I find myself repeating the message.
Well, we could do a whole other episode just on apparel and dress code, Shirley, but I will give you my 2 cents quickly here. Peggy Orenstein, who wrote Girls and Sex and a second book called Boys and Sex, says really eloquently, we want our young people to revel in their sexuality, not be reduced to it. And I think that really ties in nicely with my messaging, which is to ask your child, do you only feel sexy or attractive or valuable if you are wearing that outfit? And if their answer is yes, we have a confidence and a self-worth issue to unpack, less of a sexuality one. And that's what we need to get a hold of. But if they can feel sexy in a turtleneck and loose sweatpants and flip-flops, right? Then is what we're wearing practical to the season, to the weather, to the professionalism that you might be walking into or not? Is the function matching of what you're wearing? And if the answer is yes, like, yeah, this is fine, this is just like what people all wear, then we want them to revel in their sexuality. If they feel like this is something that is a part of who they are, but isn't all of who they are, and they don't require it in order to be valued or defined, then we should let our young people be sexually liberated. And I feel like there are ways to really promote that sex positivity in the home front.
That's an interesting way to put it when dealing with, because a lot of parents are dealing with these issues, that rather than saying, don't wear it because people will look at you a certain way, turn it on them. How do you feel when you wear it? What does it make you feel?
Right.
Do you have these positive feelings without it?
Right.
And that may, Shirley, that may help you guide the conversation, because I know a lot of us say you should be able to wear what you want to wear, but in reality, this is how the world works. And that message, if it worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Yeah. And who are you wearing that for? And tell me how it's for yourself and not for someone else to be able to give you value. Because I want you to sustainably, self-sufficiently be able to give value to yourself. That is what self-worth is.
Shirley has one more comment, and then we're going to wrap up slowly. She says, I like that, so thank you. And sorry to go off topic, but I have to see what she's wearing when she's doing these TikToks. That's a good point. She's doing these TikToks. It's not just the people at her school who are seeing her, who know her.
Sure. Or it could be a private account. I'm not sure what your child's, TikTok account looks like. But I mean, I think that's a whole other layer of conversation where this can be spread to places that, you might not have control of.
Thank you, Shirley. What should parents be doing?
Talking about sex all the time and not in the context of sexual violence. I think many parents wait until a Me Too story to hit the news to then start having the talk when it should be an ongoing conversation. And I think parents will be surprised to know that there are so many ways to actually be talking about sexuality that isn't condom on banana. There's so many things outside of STIs and preventing pregnancies that we can be talking about this. And I think gender is one really specific way that is pervasive in our everyday. Gender roles, expectations, what we, socialize them to believe just based on what we maybe assign to them at birth, which might not be aligned to who they are. And so talking about gender, I think, is a really easy way to already, one, get to a place where all genders are celebrated and embraced, but that actually brings down rape culture because we're allowing our young people to feel free in who they are. And that ultimately is what leads them to feeling fulfilled. So talk about these things often and don't wait for a violent, instance to be able to actually start talking about it.
Thank you. What's on the horizon for health education, especially porn literacy?
I hope that it exists beyond my classroom. That's really what I hope is on the horizon. It's a scary and taboo topic for most schools and most communities, and so it's not there. And this is why our teens are relying on porn to therefore get their education on sex at large and to understand how their body works. So my hope is that the horizon includes comprehensive sex education and health education in schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, and understanding sex positivity to really be the way to understand sex, because pleasure-based sex education is really what keeps our kids the most safe, by understanding how their body works, empowering them with those tools, and really scrutinizing their relationships of all kinds because they understand what pleasure means.
And until we can get this, well, even when we do get it from all fronts on schools and stuff, we should be doing it at home, which is what we're talking about today, because that's where you make the biggest impact, what's happening and discussed at home, right?
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our time is up. It always whizzes by. I don't see any more comments or questions. So I'm going to thank you for what you've given us. It's a lot of information. I'm hoping that some families out there will be having casual conversations going forward, maybe accessing some of the resources that we've put in the comments section.
Thanks, Kamaya, for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.